1 minute or so.
Sure.
Okay, we are live, so I'll start now.
Hmm.
Hello, everybody. A very good afternoon to all of you, and welcome to yet another exciting session of Tinkerpreneur 2023. So, Tinkerpreneur, as all of you know by now, that it is a 7-week long summer boot camp which equips each student with key digital skills and entrepreneur skills so that they can create their own online ventures by the end of the boot camp. Students get assignments and they learn through a lot of self-learning videos and a lot of YT Live sessions, which ATL Innovation Mission keeps conducting on a weekly basis. And all of this does not happen without the able guidance and mentorship of the ATL in charges and the mentors of change. So, just like I said, ATL Innovation Mission keeps coming back with a lot of exciting YT Live sessions. Today, here we are with another special guest, Mr. Sharat Sharma, who's the co-founder of iSpirit, and he will be conducting this session on refining and building the products. So a little bit about Sharat sir. His personal mantra, as he would like to say, has always been to lead big and small companies through a lot of orbit changes. He is one of the active technology angel investors in India with about 2 dozen investments and is a passionate evangelist of the software product ecosystem in India. Sir has held a number of senior executive positions with leading technology companies and was the chair of NASSCOM Product Forum and a member of the Executive Council from 2009 to 30. We are glad to have you, sir, and we are really looking forward to this session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much. And I'm happy to be here. When Dipali asked me to do this session, what kind of appealed to me was this word, Tinkerpreneur. I thought it was such a cool name, because I think, we are moving into this world where tinkerers are becoming the entrepreneurs of the future. And this is not new, by the way. It's been happening in many other parts of the world already. And of course, if you go back in time, you must have heard of famous tinkerers like Edison, and before that, Louis Pasteur, and so on and so forth. So this idea that there is joy in tinkering, and you can use that as a leap, as a point to become an entrepreneur in the future, is a very, very important idea. I know we are kind of limited that we are not in front of each other, and this is kind of a little bit one way for me, because I'm not getting to see you and I don't see your expressions. So I will say, if many of you are in front of your computer and you can chime in with your questions along the way, we'll of course do questions at the end. But anything that you have along the way, it'll be good if you put it in, because Tanvi has promised that she'll relay it back here. So we'll try and make it more interactive that way. So before we get to digital products and how to build and refine them, a good starting point is, how are products different from projects? Because in India, we all understand projects very well because of the IT services industry that is there, and we don't fully understand products. So I'll give you a very, very simple example of the difference. So in India, there are many, many places where you can get from a municipality, you can get a birth certificate or death certificate. And in many places, they no longer give a birth certificate, death certificate by hand. They have a software that they use to be able to issue the birth and death certificate. So there are two ways they can do that. One way they can do that is that they go to a company and say, hey, आप हमारे लिए ऐसा software बना दीजिए. And so the software that is used in one city, let's say Nagpur, is not the same that is used in another city, which is Moradabad, because each one of them gave a project to somebody and said, can you make a birth and a death certificate giving software for us? And in India, actually, that is the case. In India, what happens is that the most of the people, they actually get a custom project done for solving their problem. So many years ago, iSpirit Foundation, where I'm one of the co-founders, we did a survey of 20 or 57 places, where they were giving birth and death certificate. And these were all places where they were using software. So that was how the selection was made. But out of these 57 municipalities, no two were using the same software. Everybody had gone out and got a project done, right? And so that becomes a problem. So take AIMS as an example. So AIMS, the software that runs AIMS, is made by a very big IT services companies. So that is as a custom software. So when new AIMS are established, what do? They get the same software redone in a way, right? Because they give a contract again and it becomes a project rather than a product. So, what is a product? In this example, a product would be a software uh, like Tally. And I am hoping that some of you may have heard of this accounting software in India from a company called Tally. And Tally uh, dominates accounting software in India, right? So for roughly about 18-20,000 rupees, you can buy a PC based software in a small business and run all your accounting on that, right? And it is so popular that you get Tally trained bookkeepers also available. So if you look for jobs, you will see Tally trained bookkeepers are there, because since everybody uses Tally, Tally is like Microsoft Office of India, right? For accounting, it is the one that is used most often. And so there are about 5 to 6 million small businesses that use that software in India. It's one of the most successful software products in the world. And the co-founder and the CEO of the company who's behind this, he's a very well regarded person. His name is Bharat Goenka, and very good thought leader. Back in time, you are very young, but you don't know, back in time there used to be a lot of piracy of software. So when software used to be available on CDs and on discs, people would copy that software and run it there. So he said, let people copy, because sooner or later they will become my customers. And so that is actually how Tally became so popular, because the first wave of people who used it were using it for free. And then he would keep improving the software, and then eventually said, it's not so expensive. It's even today roughly about 18,000 rupees. And using the original software means you'll have the latest software all the time. And you'll get some customer support if something goes wrong. And so he was slowly able to convert all the people who are using pirated software into people who are using, almost all the people. There's still people using pirated software, but almost all the people into actually using real software. So this is the difference between projects and products. India is making this shift from projects to products in almost every area. And why is this important? Because let's say we want to improve our healthcare, and we want to improve it, and we need to therefore impact every primary healthcare center that is there in the country. And then if you have to improve that primary healthcare center everywhere in the country, then is it possible to do so many projects? No, it's not possible to do so many projects. The only way to do this is to make a primary healthcare center software that can run on something like a PC, and make it available at a low cost, so that whoever is running that center, many times it's the state government running the center. Some of those primary healthcare centers are run by NGOs, but they can all buy that software and use it as they go forward. So when we think of mobile world now very often people don't run it on a PC at all. So accounting software very often runs on the mobile phone. So today you can buy an application, right, on the mobile phone, which will do all your accounting for you if you're a small business. Now, unfortunately, Tally doesn't have that application, because they came up in the world of the PC, so they haven't migrated to doing it for the phone. So, but there are new startups in India that have emerged, which actually are doing it on the phone. So when you think of a phone app, that is actually a simple software product that you're talking about. It's a digital product that you're talking about. So our goal is to create so many high quality products that India becomes one of the product nations in the world, right? So why is this important? Why is it important for India to become a product nation? Because it so happens that all the money is in products, is not in services. So I'll give you examples, and they may surprise you a little bit. So, one of the companies which is a software product company is Microsoft. I'm sure you have heard of Microsoft, right? Now you would say Microsoft to bilkul theek hai, and Microsoft right now is doing very well. They have a Indian CEO. His name is Satya. He's taken over, and he's been a wonderful CEO for Microsoft, and he's so humble. He's such a big learner. He treats people very well. He comes from a research and development background, so he's very technical, and he's been very successful. But if you go back roughly about 10 years, 2013, Microsoft was kind of struggling because this new CEO was not in place. And Microsoft in a way had lost, as a company, was losing its way. So its profits had started falling. So the low point for Microsoft profits was, I think, 2013 or 2014, give or take a year. But even at that low point in their profits, they made more money than the top 20 IT services companies of the world put together. We are not talking about Infosys, TCS, Tech Mahindra, top IT services companies of India. We are talking top IT services companies of India plus the world, Accenture and everybody else. So the difference when you have a successful product companies make a lot more money than services companies do. I'll give you another example. Every country in the world, almost every country in the world, has an airline, right? So even Nepal has an airline. I don't know if Bhutan has an airline, but probably Bhutan must be having an airline. Bangladesh certainly has an airline. Every country in the world has an airline. But all those airlines buy planes only from two places, Boeing and Airbus. So is it surprising to you that the aircraft companies, the product companies, make more money than the airline companies? So if you take the profits of all the airlines in the world, they make less money than what these two companies make all by themselves. So therefore, where should you be? Supposing we have a very successful airline, Air India, Tata, all that goes on to become very, very successful. That airline plus all such airlines in the world put together will make less money than Boeing and Airbus, right? So I could go on and on. Every country in the world has a telecom operator. We have Jio, Airtel, Vodafone. You must be using all of these, right? So there are about 400 mobile operators in the world. But there are actually only four companies that supply equipment to them that allows them to have a network. You know what are they called? They're called HENS. They're all digital products because all software. You know what does HENS stand for? Huawei, Ericsson, Nokia, and Samsung. So four companies own all the equipment that they supply to the rest of the world. Now, hopefully, because Huawei is dropped off, there is a big effort in India to say Huawei की जगह में Indian company आ सकती है कि नहीं? And I'm happy to tell you most likely the answer will be yes. And maybe a year or two later, when you hear about all this, you will find that hens has become tens. And you'll wonder what that T is. T is likely to be a startup, a product startup called Tejas Networks. Now, it's not a new startup. It's a startup that's been around for 23 years. So Sanjay Nayak and his team have been patiently working away for 23 years. For 20 of those 23 years, it was, man, a very difficult time. But because of this shift that is taking place, because 4G and 5G, they were able to invest in advance of other companies, and they were able to seize this shift. And now, because of this, Tejas is emerging as a big player. So they recently won an order, a small order. You know how many? What is the size of that order? $2.9 billion. So it's not small actually, right? So if you think of it, $1 billion is roughly nowadays about 8,000 crores. And so they have won an order, give or take, roughly about 23,000 crores, right? And why is that happened? Because they made a product that is better than anybody else in the world. So India's future is slowly shifting from being a project services nation to also becoming a product nation, right? So we are very good at services. We can build a very good airline in the world. Hopefully, Air India will become one of the big successful airlines of the world. But even before that, Vistara or Indigo are very good airlines. We can build very good telecom operators. Geo is very successful. I use Airtel. That's also very good. And we have very good hospitals in the world. I mean, in every city, for example, many of Dipali and all are in Delhi. There Vedanta is very famous. Yeah, I'm in Bangalore. Here Narayan Herdale is very famous, right? So Indian hospitals are very well known, and therefore we have medical tourism because people come from all over the world, to get treated in our hospitals. But the product portion of this is when you make drugs and medicines. So take an example of a company called Pfizer. You may have heard of them. And Pfizer makes drugs. They are not in the hospital business. But Pfizer makes more money than the top 100 hospital chains of the US put together. Right? So you get the story here that we are playing out. There is services, and we can, as a country, build very good service companies. But we are only now beginning to learn how to build product companies, because product companies are few. They're not that many, and they have a phenomena where the winner takes all. So remember, I talked to you about Tally. Tally is the winner in India. It has almost 80% market share of the accounting software in India. Now, there is another company, do you know which is the largest software product company in India? Any guesses? Tanvi, let's see if our audience is able to guess and they throw up any name to you.
Yes,
I'll
I
give
can.
you a hint. It is a company based in Chennai. Okay, I'll give another hint. Remember, its name starts with the alphabet Z. Z. The company is. Did anybody guess any name at all, Tanvi?
No, I'm not seeing a lot of
I hope they are
Zebronics.
listening. They are not getting bored.
Somebody
Guys,
has suggested Zebronics.
Zebronics, that's a product company that, and they must be seeing ads of this many places because they are,
Emails,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, but that's a good, it's an example of a product company, right? Another one that is doing well in the musical side is Boat, is as a product company is doing well. But the one I am talking about is a software company called Zoho.
Yes, we got another answer, which is called Zoho, and this is from Suchi Khanna.
Suchi, congratulations to you. Hats off to you. So you know what? Zoho, in its own segment, has 84% of the global market share. So in the world, when in its own area, when people buy CRM, 84% market share. There's no other area in India, no other company of India, which dominates its own category and has 84% global market share, right? So it's a remarkable company. I'll tell you a little bit about that because I want to use Zoho to illustrate one more aspect of digital products. One is that digital products, of course, are very different from projects. Second is digital products is where the money is. If you can succeed with digital products, you'll make more money than any other part, any other type of company that you have. We've talked about it. Now, I want to tell you with Zoho an example of what Zoho represents. So, what happens is that in products, when you have products at every price point. So, look at our cars. If you have to buy a car, you can buy an Alto. I don't know what the current price is, but let's say at 2 3 lakh rupees, you can buy a car. But you can also buy a 20 lakh rupee car, right? And at every price point, you'll find a car. Now you can say car is a car. It is to go from one place to another place. Why are there cars at every price point? Because they offer different features, right? And so this is true for products also, software products, digital products also. So, for example, Zoho sells a software product. They sell many, but then the most successful product is a CRM product. CRM stands for Customer Relationship Management. So every company wants to keep track of its customers, who have who may have become their customers. So they're in the funnel, but they have not become their customers, or they were old customers and no longer current customers. So they want to keep a track of all of this, and so that they can manage their relationship with them, right? So they use a software for doing that. Now, there are three types of software that are available. So one type of software is roughly, it costs $12 per seat. In other words, if I'm a small company and I buy that software and it's going to be used by only one person in my company, so I pay $12 a month for it, because I don't have to now download the software. It is available to me in the cloud, and I can now use my browser, log in. So if I buy the login for one person in my company, I pay $12 for it, right? Now it has many features and is very popular. Remember, I said that $12, think of it, it's Maruti Alto, and they are the Maruti of that market, because Maruti sells more lower end cars than any other company in India. But there is also, let's say, a Honda City or a Honda or a Hyundai Creta available, right? And that is available at $50 per per login, right? And who dominates that? There's a very famous company in the US, you may have heard of it. It's called Salesforce.com. So Salesforce dominates the $50 segment. Then, believe it or not, there is a expensive version of this also. So if there's Creta, there is, you can say, there is a BMW. The BMW version is available at $200 a login, and $200 a login is from a company called Oracle. The product is called Fusion CRM. So now there is a market for a $200 CRM product. There is a market for $50 CRM product. There is a market for $12 CRM product. Now, of course, which one sells more? Do BMW sell more, or do Maruti Alto sell more? Obviously, Maruti Alto sells more, right? So although they have cheaper price, but they sell lots of them. So therefore, revenue of Maruti is a very good revenue in India, because they sell many cars like this. So Zoho is a company like that. So Zoho became the India's first company that said, I will go to small businesses everywhere in the world. You know why? Because I don't need to ship them a CD. I don't need to ship them a disk, because I can actually sell them on the cloud itself. And if you're going to the cloud and testing out my software, so they give that software free for a month. They said if somebody is trying out my software, they don't know whether I'm in California or I'm in Chennai. उनको क्या पता है मैं कहाँ हूँ they only care whether this piece of software is good software or not. Is this product a good software product or not? And if it's a good software product, they'll buy it. And that is exactly what happened. And so they went on to become India's most successful software product company in recent time. How successful? So they, every day, there are 50 million people who use, in other words, there are 50 million people who log into Zoho every day to use their software products. Of that 50 million people, almost all of them, because they chose to sell outside India, almost all of them are in the West. So, like everybody in India knows Tally, usually everybody in the US knows Zoho because every MSME in the US and in many other parts of the world in the West, their business is running on Zoho at this point in time. So where am I going? Why do I give you this example? To illustrate 2 points. One is that, look, in software products, there are often going to be products at every price point, right? In other words, there'll be a low end phone, there'll be a mid end phone, there'll be a high end phone. I use a phone, I don't like using Chinese phones, so I use a Pixel, but my Pixel is not high end. The high end Pixel is Pixel 7. I am still on Pixel 4a. So I'm using a mid end phone. But my daughter likes to use high end phone. She uses a fanciest version of the Pixel that is there. So the point is that there in almost anything that we do, there'll be a mid-end watch, there'll be a low-end watch, there'll be a high-end watch. A watch is a watch, but there is a place for all the types of watches. There's a place for many types of phone. There are places for many types of car. There are many place for many types of software products and therefore digital products that we are talking about, right? And being able to choose which one that you will play in, which one can you build, is very important, because that will determine whether or not it will happen, right? So I see a few questions that Pramit and Tanvi have put. Uh, yeah, does product refining need continuous feedback? And I'll come to that. And uh, uh, okay, so all right. So, so we are so far slowly laying the groundwork for what we are talking about right now. And so, just to recap so far, projects help build services companies, or their services companies. India is already very good at it. Now, the future of India is to build product companies. And product companies are usually fewer, but because they are fewer and they go on to be successful, they are very, very valuable. In fact, all the trillion-dollar market cap companies in the world are software product companies, right? And right now. So they're a very valuable part of the economy. India is going to focus on making that happen. We are making some good progress. And we talked a little bit about Tally. We talked about Zoho. We talked about why India needs it. Is because that's the only way to serve the large country. For example, if we need something for public health centers, we'll need some software like Tally and Zoho rather than software, projects that we talked about earlier. So that's really what is happening. Now, there is one more aspect of products that is very, very important. The other aspect of products is that their innovation ecosystem is very different from that of a services company. So the way Indigo will become innovative is because they will usually do process innovation. So some people ask, why does Indigo have only female flight attendants? You know why? Because female flight attendants are lighter than male flight attendants. So believe it or not, they are saving weight and therefore, fuel, and of course, they do as good a job, perhaps even a better job, both from a safety perspective and a service perspective. So it is a win-win for everybody concerned. So that is an example of a process innovation. In the case of products, you have a different type of innovation. So when we talked about Tejas innovation is to build a better product than anybody else. Sometimes building a better product for different segments of the market requires you to focus not merely on the product, but what is behind the product. So let me see if I can give you this example. Now, many of you are young. So I am assuming that you don't even know that back in time, the most popular brand of mobile phones used to be Nokia. I am hoping that Dipali and Pramit at some point used a Nokia product. If you go back in time, the first phone they came out with was a phone called 3100. It was very, very popular, and many people used it, and it kind of was a rocking phone. And but what happened was, 1 year went by, no upgrades, no new phone. 2 years go by, no upgrades, no new phone. And now newspaper articles start writing this article saying one trick pony, right? By the way, this is what happened in India as well. If you remember, Mahindra came up with a very successful car called Scorpio, and then for a long while nothing came, right? And people said, oh God, I mean, they had such a good car, why don't they upgrade Scorpio, why don't they have more cars, right? And nothing happened for a little while. So this is what happened to Nokia also. But Nokia, in its 2.5 years later, on one day they released two phones, and some of you may have heard of it. One phone was a high end phone called N-Gage, and one was a low end phone called Nokia 1100, which, by the way, had a torch. They were one of the first phones in the world to have the torch functionality. And Nokia 1100 was the cheapest phone in the world and went on to become the largest selling phone in the world, right? But now they had three phones, 3100, Engage, and 1100. And in the next 18 months, they launched dhadadhad one after the other. They launched how many more phones? 14 more phones. So now suddenly they had 17 phones in the market. And so if you wanted to buy a phone for 3,000 rupees, there was 1100. If you wanted to buy a phone for 30,000 rupees, there was Engage. And there was a phone at every price point that you can imagine. And they went on, therefore, to become the largest and the most successful phone company in the world. Why? Because remember, they were able to sell a sasta sabun and an sabun and everything else in the middle. A cheap vacuum cleaner, an expensive vacuum cleaner, and everything else in the middle. A cost-effective car, an expensive car, and everything else in the middle. They have found a way to have many products in their company. How did they manage to do that? Have you ever thought that how is it that in India, that Suzuki, which is a small car company in the world, it's the seventh largest car company in the world, can have many more cars in India than Toyota, which is the world's largest car maker in the world, can have, right? Now, remember, they've launched a new car which probably will become popular. What's it called? Jimny, right? And how they're able to have, because what they do is that across all their cars behind the scenes, they're more or less the same. They're like Lego pieces. They've created a single platform, or single platform say they can assemble many new types of cars. This is what Nokia also did. They created a single platform on the back end, which is eventually, it wasn't called that in the beginning, but eventually was called Series 20. So Series 20, with very little modification, could do what is called combinatorial innovation. Just take their internal pieces and you the market. So sometimes the success of product companies is not in the product alone, but is also in the things that are happening behind the product. It's in the platform. In the case of Nokia, it was a Series platform. In the case of Maruti cars, car platforms that they have built that allow them to use the same platform to make a Swift on one side and Baleno on the other. And on the back end, they have very many common parts. They're very different from each other. But for a consumer, they're getting exactly what they need to make it forward. And that is why, Maruti still has roughly about 50% market share in India, right? Because they have a native car in every segment that you're talking about. Now, why do I introduce this idea? Is because for almost all software companies, there is an unseen part and there is a seen part. Seen part were the Nokia phones that you could see. The seen part was Series 20 that you could not see, right? Same in Maruti, the seen part are the cars that you can see, but there is an unseen part that you cannot see. And very often, the unseen part is the source of competitive advantage as we go forward, right? So India had so far a business culture where we would build only the seen. We were not wired to worry about the unseen part at all. For people, some back about 10 years ago, they said we must build this unseen part, not as a private part, but as an unseen part that anybody can use for free. And that unseen part has gone on to be called as stack. So that India stack, all of you use India stack. I'm guessing that there is nobody here, for example, who doesn't have an Aadhaar ID. So Aadhaar eKYC is the first part of Instack. That allowed the banks to do, eKYC and give bank accounts to lots of people. If anybody has a geo kind of a service, then you must have put your thumbprint twice to get your SIM. That is geo using eKYC. In fact, they use only eKYC. There's no other way to get it, right? So that's one. Then you also use the second part of India Stack, which is UPI. And UPI is the second part. The third, which is becoming popular, which you should look it up, is called the account aggregator. If you go to .org.in, you can find more about it. And why are these unseen unseen platforms being built in India as digital platforms, public platforms, so that anybody can use it, so that all of you can
Uh,
any
sorry.
one company to build, maybe nobody.
I think there's some network issues on Sharat sir's side.
Yes, sir.
Sir, we're not able to hear you now.
Uh, Meanwhile, we'll just quickly check and be back. We request all the students who are watching this YT live session to put in your
Products will have
questions.
many segments. Yes, please, Tanvi.
Yes, sir. No, sir, we were actually not able to hear you. So, yeah.
Okay. Now can you hear me? Huh.
Yes, sir, we can hear you now.
So, 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 so digital products have many segments. Pick one segment. Like Nokia picked one segment, 3100. Zoho picked one. Zoho now has 100 products. 100 products. I'm not joking. 100 products. But the one that they picked in the beginning was the CRM. So pick one product and then find a way to make the second and the third, without having to spend the same amount of energy, because you build something unseen that can allow you to build the second, third. So Maruti's first car, you remember, was the first car. Then they build the platform and now they can make many cars, right? So the trick is to think of segments, pick one segment, build it, and then expand the segment. So because that's how your company's business will expand. So if you go back to Microsoft, they build only MS-DOS, then they build Microsoft Word, then they build Excel, then they build all these products that they called as Microsoft Office and many more, right? So this is the journey of a digital product or a software product company. Start with one, build the unseen, and then build many more. Sometimes that unseen is built by the company, and sometimes the unseen is built by well-wishers, volunteers, and so that many companies can build it. So I don't know if, I'm guessing many of you use Android, right? Like I do. And do you know Android is from a company, very powerful company called Google. But they use something called Linux kernel. Who's made Linux kernel? Volunteers. Now you may ask, why is one of the most powerful companies in the world has to rely on something that's made by volunteers? Can't they hire smart people and build something of their own instead of having to rely on volunteers building the unseen part, right? Of course they can, but they don't, because when volunteers build something, they build it with Shraddha. As they say, sometimes if you want to have the best food, go and have a langar. Langar is the best place where you can have good food, because you'll have it with Shraddha, right? So take another one. I'm talking to you using a MacBook. Mac is from one of the other richest companies in the world, Apple. You know what is the unseen part of a MacBook? It is it is Unix kernel. Who made Unix kernel? Volunteers. In fact, you maybe most of you were not born. I did my engineering from 82 to 86. In 1984, I became a Unix kernel guy. And I ended up being part of Bell Labs because Unix was owned by, at that time, Bell Labs, but made by volunteers in the universities. And they made a list. There was a shortage of Unix kernel engineers. So they made a list of people. People who had submitted code and whose code had made it to Unix kernel, right? And so they made two lists. One list they asked their partners to hire. The second list they went and hired themselves. So without ever being in any interview or anything like that, one day I wake up and I realize that I am being offered a job by AT&T Bell Labs. And you remember AT&T at that time was what Google and Apple is today. It was one of the richest, most powerful companies in the world. And why did that happen? Because I was a volunteer. I had contributed something that the world thought was of value, right? And even today, 30 years later, a very powerful company, Apple, still uses that software as the unseen part of its computers as they go forward. So therefore, now India has become a special country, because for all of you, India has gone ahead with volunteers, many of them in Bangalore, iSpirit volunteers, gone ahead and built the unseen part called India Stack, so that you can on top of it build the software, and so that you can help make India become a software nation as you go forward. Now, the question that Dipali asked is, why did Nokia fail? So I'll ask you a question. Let us, you know, let us assume that we are four of us on the screen. At least I can on my screen see four people. Maybe you can see four people, but just take 4 or 5 people that are there. You and your friends. All of you go and buy. All of you have a budget. The budget is whatever, 30,000 rupees. And all of you have to go and buy a new Android phone, right? Now, let's assume you go and buy the same Android phone, all 4 or 5 of you. And then a day or two later, Pramit comes for an inspection of those phones. And he says, okay, what apps do you have on phone number one? What apps do you have phone number two? What apps do you have phone number three, phone number four? Actually, you'll find all the four phones will have a different set of apps. Some will be common, but there'll be also a lot of variations. So, what do we do when we buy a phone? We customize our phone by downloading the apps that we need. So after a while, no two phones are the same because they have a different mix of apps. So what Nokia was trying to do was to give you 18, remember 17 segments, 14 plus 3. So you could have only one of the 17 phones. But when this App Store came about, which was introduced by Apple originally, then what happened is you could now get a custom phone for all practical purposes. You bought the same hardware, but you put different apps on it, and your phone was now different from anybody else's. So you could have a different look and feel. You could, of course, have different software. So again, it resulted in many more segments becoming possible. And this shift was like a shift from 3G to 4G, and Nokia never saw that shift in time. Like like Tally didn't see the shift and say we should build an accounting software on the mobile phone, because sitting there said कौन mobile phone पे accounting software use करेगा. But the reality is lots of people, kirana shops and all, are happy to use accounting software on the mobile phone. So they didn't move quickly enough, so that became an opportunity for a new product to come in. So this is why Nokia missed the bus, because they created a Nokia phone store where they allowed this to happen, maybe they would have been around, but they missed the bus. This is why Tejas is becoming popular, because they caught the bus when this change was taking place from 3G to 4G, 4G to 5G. So there is always going to be opportunities that will come up as technology changes, as market changes, for people to come in and build more software. So how do you build more software? So I'm going to tell you a story, and I know we have 15 minutes, and hopefully we'll have some time for Q&A also. I'll tell you a story of a person. His name is Gian Forte. So back in time when software product industry was new, this is, I'm taking you back to 2009. We used to do these big sessions called NASCOM Product Conclave, where we would bring all these people from all across the world, because at that time the software product industry was very, very new. So one of those people was Greg Gianforte, right? Now he is a guy who is in the middle of nowhere, like Montana. So if you know US, Montana is the middle of the country, back or beyond. You're not connected to anywhere else, and this is now, no part of India is like this. But if you go 10 years ago, this would have been somewhere in Northeast, right? If you're in Northeast, coming back to Delhi or other places was hard. You had to change a flight in Guwahati and in Kolkata, and it was generally hard to travel to other parts of the country. So he was somewhat like that. But you know what? He had an idea. He realized his idea was that in the US, everybody used to give you 800 numbers. So if you talk to any company, PNG or any consumer company, and you call them to complain or give a suggestion or ask a question, your call would go to a voicemail. You called the 800 number that was free to call, the call would go to a voicemail. And it was almost 100% sure that they will call you back. So because they had a system of tracking all those incoming calls. But they had now started also putting an email. I'm taking you back to 98, 99, the start of the internet. And they had started putting an email. And he realized, when I send them the same message by email, it goes into a black hole. They don't answer it at all. Right? So he said, look, I will build a product for you which will track every email so that you can give it the same treatment that you give to every voicemail. Right? And ultimately, if your company culture is that every voicemail should be answered, you should have the same thing for email. So I'm going to give this product to you. So he said, this is a great product idea. And he said, I'll go ahead and build this. Now, poor guy is sitting in Montana. So what he decides to do is he's very convinced about his idea. So he starts calling. So he starts 8 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock. He's making calls. Remember, this is landline calls because the internet had, the mobile phones had not taken off. So he's calling, he'll call the company because the companies usually will, advertise this number that you can call into. Then he would reach somebody. Then he would say, I want to talk to somebody. They said, okay, you should talk to John, but I'm not John. I'll transfer your call to John. And maybe John was not the right person, and maybe John will not call back, right? So he would spend the whole day calling till he would find the right person in the company. And then he would tell them that this is what they need. They said, okay, yeah, this sounds very good. Can you send it to us? He said, Are, but I've not made it yet. I've yet to make it. But I am sharing with you because I'm telling you I'm going to make it. It will be ready in 4 or 5 months. And when it is ready, I'll ship it to you. But if I send it to you, will you buy it? That was the question he was asking people. And slowly, he accumulated 40 people who promised him that if he made this product at this price, they will buy it. So he was a software guy. So then he sat down and he decided to make the software. And after he made the software, he went to those 40 people and he said, look, I promised you I'll make it in 5, 6 months. I made it in 6 months. I am shipping the CD to you. You decide and you use it. And if you like it, you pay for it. Only 12 people paid for it. Now I say 12 people paid for it, but 12 means he had 12 customers. 12 customers in 5, 6 months. Now he had an opportunity to hire another person in his company. So I ask you a question, who should he have hired? He asked himself this question. He said, should I hire a salesperson? Because remember, only out of the 40, 12 bought. 40 promised to buy, but only 12 bought. So I'm not a very good salesperson. So maybe I should hire a salesperson. Or should I hire a technical person? Because I can learn how to do selling because I'm obviously not good at it. And but I know how to code. So if I hire the wrong person, I will know I have hired the wrong person. And therefore I will be able to fix it. If I've hired the wrong person, I can fire that person and hire a new one. And he went on to essentially hire a techie. And he spent his time becoming a better salesperson. And he went on to build a company called Right Now. He never needed VC money. By the way, Zoho has never taken VC money. And Tally has never taken VC money. So all this story that you hear that you need VCs to build valuable companies is not true. Right Now never took VC money. He finally sold his company for $3.4 billion to, I think, Oracle or SAP. And where did those $3.4 billion go? All of it went to his pocket and his employees' pocket because there were no VCs in their system at all, right? So this is how these companies are built, and they essentially immerse themselves. So first of all, every software company needs a husband and a wife. I know this is a very corny way of saying this, right? It needs a person who understands tech and a person who understands the problem, right? They're usually two different people. You can be one or the other, very difficult to be both at the same time. So, first of all, if you're trying to do a product, you must have an arranged marriage. Don't do a love marriage. When do you do a love marriage? If you're a techie, you'll find another co-founder who's also a techie. उससे नहीं काम चलेगा, उससे पैदा होगा. Baby पैदा करना है तो you need a man and a woman. You need two different people. So then it needs an arranged marriage. So you have to find somebody who's different from you. So if you are a person who is understands sales, marketing, product management, you can understand, live amongst people, and understand what they're saying, what they would want. You can do that digital immersion. Then I have another partner, hopefully equal part comes from a tech background. So today what happens is many of us, we Italy, you will have people with a sales background, they'll have those business good. You come to Bangalore, you'll find two people with both tech background. Angel investor, any.
Uh, so your voice is cracking. Sharat sir, are you able to hear us? Just quickly checking in. Yeah. Uh, sir, we actually we lost you in between. So yeah. Sharat sir, are you speaking something?
Can you hear me now? Huh.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so coming back to this, so we learned segments, starting with one segment, building an unseen platform so that you can migrate to many segments. Then, even when you're working on one segment, making sure you have two people, two types of people in your company or in your team, somebody with a business background and somebody with a tech background. And it is a jugalbandi between those two that is going to be very, very important as you go forward, right? That jugalbandi is going to be very essential as you go forward. And we saw this is what Greg Gianforte did. Finally, it is possible now to do what is called as digital immersion. Right? You could go and understand. And by the way, this is why Chinese apps did very well in India. And we of course now are banning Chinese apps. But what the Chinese entrepreneurs would do is that they would come to India for 3 months. They would land in Bangalore. Bangalore now has a pool of translators. They would pick one of the translator. These Chinese entrepreneurs would spend at least 3 months, most of them 6 months, some of them even longer. They would travel all across the country with that translator. What they would do is, because they said, sitting in China, how do we know what people in Bharat want? What do people in small towns want? So they would spend their time immersing themselves in the problem that needed to be solved. So that physical immersion is very, very important. And sometimes the only way to do it is physical immersion, right? Because, and so therefore, when we had to ban Chinese lending apps, you know, it was, of course, they were behaving badly and they needed to be banned. But the other thing we don't appreciate is that their ability to go to Bharat and understand what people need was better than our own entrepreneur. हमने क्या किया कि अगर आप में से कोई लोग इंजीनियर बन जाएंगे, आईआईटी चले जाएंगे या आईएम चले जाएंगे, then you think you are above this idea of going to Bharat and learning what is happening there. That is why, do you know, Zoho doesn't hire any IIT engineer. I'm not joking. You can check for yourself. They say they become so full of themselves. They become brown babus that they are not willing to immerse themselves in their own country's culture to figure out what is happening. So, so ultimately, when you create a team of two people, you still must know more about the problem than anybody else does, right? So immersion becomes very important. That immersion is the problem that you're solving. One of the reasons, one type of digital products that are doing very well is digital products that cater to developers, because a developer doesn't have to go to any other place to understand what developers needs are. So it's only talk to yourself and you'll know what your needs are. But if you are trying to make it for small town in India, village in India, then you must understand it, and that becomes very important. Now there is something called digital immersion as well, and I'm going to stop after that for questions. Digital immersion is that maybe you, let's say, are from a small town. You understand how middle school teachers in Madhya Pradesh, what is it that they need, and therefore you can understand the problem. You even decide to build a software product for them, and let us say that software product goes on to be very successful. Now it's quite clear that the middle school teachers in the US are not like middle school teachers here in India at all. So one way for you to solve this problem is like China. Chinese came to India. You go to the US and spend 3 months, 6 months traveling and meeting lots of middle school teachers. Of course, that is possible. But there is an alternative to that. Luckily, the middle school teachers in the US write a lot of blogs. So you can find lots of blogs in the life of a middle school teacher, right? You can now learn from whether they're happy, not happy, what are they happy, what are they not happy, from places like Glassdoor. So you can, because they live their life digitally, and there is so much of information available about them. Now you can spend the same 3 months actually doing what is called as digital immersion. And believe it or not, this actually works. And if you do a good job, then sitting in India, you can immerse yourself into a middle school teacher of Germany, middle school teacher of Italy, middle school teacher of America, and different types of schools, and then build a product for them. Now, since just the way you can do immersion sitting far away, you can also sell to them sitting far away. So that is called desk marketing and selling. So let's say now you build a product. Now, how do you sell to them? So you now remember I told you about Zoho. Zoho doesn't have Salesforce, doesn't have field salespeople in any of these countries, because these are all people. They send to them a link and say, I got a great product. You can evaluate it. So, for example, if you have to go to a new city and you're looking for a hotel to stay in, you may look at TripAdvisor saying, ये hotel अच्छा है कि ये hotel अच्छा है, right? Similarly, for digital products, there are TripAdvisor like places. So, for example, you want to go to a restaurant, you can go to Swiggy and Zomato and say, ये restaurant ज़्यादा अच्छा है कि ये restaurant ज़्यादा अच्छा है, right? Originally, Zomato was about comparing restaurants, not about ordering food, right? So similarly, there are many sites. The most popular site is called G2. And if you go to G2, you can compare Zoho with its competitors. And why these comparisons are accurate? Because they allow only their customers to actually write the feedback. So Zoho then says, okay, look, I have a great software. This is exactly for you. Try it out for a month or two, and I'll give you this coupon to try it out for a month or two. And then when they're trying it out, they're carefully watching, and they're saying कैसे try कर रहे हैं. अगर उनको कोई problem हुआ, तो यहीं से somebody will call up that, not even a customer. Remember, they are only trial customer, and saying, I can see you are having difficulty. Let me see if I can make you a better, help you use my product a little better. Because what they want to do is, in that free trial period, they want to get them hooked. And if they get them hooked, then when the trial period runs out, then they'll buy the product. So this is one way of doing it. The other way of doing it, do you know what is the most successful product in the world for schools? It's a company called Foridian. It is, believe it or not, from Kerala. Now they're based in Bangalore. They make this software for school teachers, and they have the largest number. Why? Because they give a free version of this, and the free version is free. Then what do is, then try they do the same thing. They see what they're using, then they call them up and try and they make them power users. When they're power users, then they upgrade. So only a small percentage of them actually upgrade. Most of them use free, but that is a workable arrangement for this to happen. So the free is open source, and then on top of it is a paid product. Now, this is a very, very common strategy. Many of us have used Skype. Remember, Skype used to be free for all of us because 8% of the people used to buy a value added service. Those 8% of the people who bought one of the value added services kept it free for the remaining 92 people. So, have you ever wondered why UPI is free for you? Because UPI is designed for the Skype business model. So UPI is free for all of us for small value transaction. You have a large value transaction, you pay for it. If you have to use IPO and put for IPO, then it's a value added transaction, you pay for it. So the fact that there are few people paying for value added services in UPI keeps it free for all of us. So this is how the business models emerge. So to summarize, finally, again, and then we'll open it up for questions if there are questions. That the to summarize, future of India is in becoming a product nation. India is already on that path. We are one of the 5 countries in the world that can send a satellite to space. We were one of the 5 countries in the world that had a COVID vaccine. We are now one of the 5 countries in the world which have something like India Stack. We are one of the 5 countries in the world that is building a software product industry in a big way. So there, India is in the future, in your lifetime, by the time you are in your late 20s and 30s, India would be a product nation. Embrace this today. So that is why if any of you become an engineer, the hottest job that you'll get from your engineering college will be to a product company, then to a services company, right? Product companies pay more than consulting companies, then consulting companies pay more than services companies. So that's the hottest part to be. But it is also a good time to be an entrepreneur. To be an entrepreneur, you must solve a problem at scale, right? You must call not a problem for one person, but problem for many people. Choose the segment very carefully, and once you are successful with one segment, expand the list of segments that you can have. Like Maruti has many cars, Nokia had many phones, right? And so on and so forth. So, but to make one segment successful, you need to have a marriage between a business person and a person on a tech person. Both have to. One is immersed in technology because technology is changing, and one is immersed in the problem in the market and understands everything. They have to really work together to produce a product. And then once you have to produce, to do that well, there is immersion that is very, very important. And if you can do digital immersion, then you can serve the world sitting in India. And if you want to serve the world sitting in India, you can also do what is called as desk marketing and selling. So this is, in other words, a digital selling and marketing that you are doing, right? It works in India also, but it also works in the world. So one of the most successful companies in India, which has done that for the Bharat market, is Zerodha, right? It's a very, very successful company. They don't have a sales force. They don't go to small towns. They do only digital sales and marketing. By the way, Zerodha is the last point I want to make. Also one of the most successful software companies out of India, also not VC funded. So please, one of the things I want to tell you is there's nothing wrong in VC funding, angel funding. I've been an angel investor myself, but this is not required because VC funding, angel investing is available only in 3 cities in India: Delhi, Mumbai, and Bangalore. If you have to be in any other city, you'll have to travel to these cities. And it can be a headache to do that because they will not give you enough attention, they'll not give you enough time. So, the best way to build a company is to bootstrap it. And bootstrapping is therefore important. And if it was not important, then the most valuable company of India, Zoho, the second most successful company of India, Tally, the hottest recent company of India, Zerodha, would not be bootstrap companies, right? And so please don't get tangled up only in funding. Instead, focus on solving a problem and solving it the right way. That is how you'll be successful in the future. So if there is time, I'm happy to take questions. I know we've run out of time. So back to you, Tanvi.
Thank you, sir. I would say that was a great session, and I'm sure that all the young entrepreneurs who had joined us today, they would have learned a lot about how to develop a product and how to refine it. And through those amazing examples, I'm pretty sure they're also able to relate it. All of them were really relatable. There are a few questions which were repetitive in the chat, and a lot of them, have them. So I would just quickly take up two of those questions which were put in the chat. So one of the questions which was asked by a lot of students was that how to choose that, which is the product that they should be developing? And do you have any suggestions for what they can, do, and how they can create a startup?
See, first is immersion. If you don't have special knowledge, and the test of immersion is that do you have counterintuitive insight about the problem? That is the test. So, for example, let's take an example, and we say that that I'm going to make a product for railways so that the trains are on time, right? Now, everybody thinks trains are delayed for some set of reasons, but you have immersed yourself in a problem and you've discovered something that others don't know. They believe, in fact, that is untrue, but they actually turns out to be true. So I'll give you an actual example. Rajan and I invested. We were lead investors, board members of a company called Wishberry, and it was two young women entrepreneurs, and they came in and they said, "Look, in India, you know, do you believe that Indians are poor in donating money to artistic causes?" And I remember very vividly, I said, yeah, we Indians are not like many other people. We are happy to deliver to religious causes, but we are not often willing to deliver to artistic causes. How many of you believe that is the case? Tanvi, do you think that is true? Dipali, do you think that is true? Pramit, do you think that is true? You are nodding. But they said, no, in our opinion, the problem is not that people are not willing to give, but the artists don't know how to ask. Right? Now, this is a counterintuitive insight. This is 100%, 180 degrees opposite of what Rajan and I are thinking at that time, right? We don't even know whether it is true. We probe them, and they genuinely they make a case and say, yeah, this looks, we said maybe, they seem to be convinced about it. They have a case to make. Maybe this is right. What if it's right? It is then a definite start to a company, because so ultimately what is immersion is the starting point. A test of an immersion is that you have discovered something about the problem that is not known to others. In fact, it's even better if what you have discovered to be true is counterintuitive. In other words, others think it is not true, but you think it is true, right? That is the start of a company. So don't start a company because AI, it's a hot area. मेरे को AI में कुछ करना है. Very wrong way to think. Crypto hot. मुझे crypto में कुछ करना है. Very wrong way to thinking. Let your tech guy who is, remember, there's going to be one person out of at least two, one will be a tech person. Let that person think about crypto. But the business person who's going to immerse himself or herself in the problem should not get carried away by crypto, AI, IoT. They should be thinking about the problem. These problems don't change. Then you can ask yourself a question, because of AI, is there an insight that can allow me to solve this problem that was never possible to solve before? Because of UPI that exists, I can solve this problem in a way that was not possible to solve before. Right? That's the question that you are asking yourself. So please don't go after what is popular. Go, in fact, I would suggest to you that the biggest sign of a good entrepreneur is contrarian. If the world thinks that you should go in this direction, they are willing to move in the other direction. That is actually a sign of a good entrepreneur. Not only a good entrepreneur, but also a good investor. If everybody thinks Air India will do very well and everybody buys an Air India share, do you think you'll make a lot of money? No. You make a lot of money if you buy a company that nobody thinks is going to do very well and it ends up doing very well. So being contrarian and being right is the recipe for outside success. So how can you be contrarian and be right? So you have to train your muscles to be a contrarian. When I was growing up, the most popular movie was Sholay. I have not seen Sholay till today. I don't. So in fact, I do these, me and Shekhar Kirani do these angel sessions. And we do the sessions that anything that comes in Times of India is too late to invest. Right? So you have to train your contrarian muscles because we are not built to be contrarian. So you have to train your muscles to be a contrarian, number one. But just being contrarian for the sake of contrarian is not going to get you anything. You must also be right. Right comes from immersing yourself in the problem and then knowing more about the problem than the people know about it. So if you read Arundhati's book, right, she is the chairperson of SBI, and she has a beautiful book called Maverick. And in that, she talks about these I Spirit volunteers. And she says she met these I Spirit volunteers, all these volunteers from Bangalore, techies. But when we met them, they knew more about my banking than I knew myself, right? So that is how we won her over, right? Because you had to immerse yourself to even build India Stack, which is non-profit, right? For the banking industry. So immersion is very important, and being contrarian is another important thing. If you do these two things and do an arranged marriage and do it step by step, everything will work out well. Arranged marriage isn't just. Please have a love marriage. I have no problem. I have had a love marriage. But I mean, as co-founders in a startup, don't be the same type. Be business and one be tech. Yeah. One more question.
Yeah, thank you, sir. There is another question which I think you slightly covered it while you were, giving the answer to the previous question, but I would still like to ask it. Is there a science or a framework to understand and adapt to changing trends and, get the first mover's advantage?
See, first of all, first mover is overrated. Is Google a first mover in search? No. Here in Bangalore, the first mover of cloud kitchen was a company called Fresh Menu. I don't hear of Fresh Menu anymore. It's been overtaken by Zomato and the Bowl company and other cloud kitchens that are there. So first mover is an overrated concept. And one of our entrepreneurs who you should pay attention to, he's a very thoughtful guy. His name is Kunal Shah. He explains why. He has a model called 4 Delta model. He says when you are a first mover, you are serving a market that is underserved. When that market is underserved, even if you bring out a product that is rates 5 out of 10. So when Fresh Menu came, even there were only 5 out of 10 on a rating scale, people took it because it was, there was a need for it. Nobody was solving that problem before. Then what happened was the second wave of people, they learned from it and they brought out something that was 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10. And then nobody has loyalty in the beginning. So everybody moved from Fresh Menu to the whole company. And Fresh Menu was not able to adapt quickly enough, right? So this first mover is less important than fully understanding what your market needs and building a world-class product for it. That is more important. Then, of course, coming in when Google has become a very big company, that's also not a good idea. Then you wait for the inflection that is going to happen. But for most of the areas that you're talking about, you don't have established players in this at all. So don't worry so much about being the first mover. Focus on being the best mover. And best mover means that you know more about the market than anybody else, and you know more about the technology that you will use to solve that problem than anybody else. And so therefore you will produce a product that is better than anything else. Now this field, the question was, is there a framework? Yes, there is a framework. The framework, there are two frameworks that are very important, and I'm going to point you to both of them. One framework is called the Lean Startup Framework. It comes from Steve Blank and Eric Rice. And if you do lean startups, you'll find it very easily. There are lots of YouTube sessions on it, lots of things that are there. The other framework, which is similar, and many people believe even better, it is called Effectuation Framework. Effectuation.org. Why is that important in India? Is because effectuation does not require VCs to be there in the mix. And India has a shortage of early stage capital that is available. So what's the difference between lean startup and effectuation? Lean startup is that somebody is coming home for dinner, and in lean startup you say भाई मैं उनको बिरयानी खिलाऊंगा. So then you open the fridge and say कि क्या missing है. Then you go and run whatever is missing so that you can make biryani at home and serve it for dinner, right? What is the effectuation framework? You open the fridge and say given what I have, what can I serve them? अरे यार बिरयानी के लिए तो सब कुछ नहीं है, पर मैं इनको राजमा चावल दे सकता हूँ. So let me make good राजमा चावल and make it. So you are more conditioned. So effectual framework is from a wonderful Indian professor. Her name is Saras Saraswati. She spends her summers in IM Bangalore, and everything is available at effectuation.org. And my request to you is read up effectuation.org. It's a very scientific framework. Read Lean Startups, again, a good scientific framework. These two frameworks will tell you how to think about and become better in everything that I told you about. All of that and more is covered in these frameworks as you go forward. Very good question.
Thank you, sir. We have shared it. And that was a great session. And I am totally delighted. And I have learned so much during this session. And I'm sure the young students who have joined us have also learned a lot. So thank you so much. I would like to hand it over to Dipali for closing remarks.
Thank you so much, sir. And I speak on behalf of the entire Atal Tinkering Labs community, students, teachers, and the AIM team that's listening in, that this was really an enlightening session, a wonderful session. All of us learned a lot, and I would say our students are very, very fortunate that they could learn from a maverick like you who's actually experienced all this. So I want to say this to students once again. Here's a person who has actually tried, failed, succeeded, gone through the entire cycle, and what you're hearing and you're listening and the insights you're getting, they are so precious. You will not get it in any books, you will not get it in any classrooms. This is something that I would encourage every ATL student to actually listen to this session once. It will answer a lot of your questions, doubts, a lot of those practical aspects of things, of building a digital product, the importance of a digital product, or any product for that matter, the importance of being a product nation, the importance of building the right team, like sir was saying, how you should actually have the right team. It answers a lot of your questions, students. You've asked questions on, how to ensure our company is successful, how do we market our product, how do we know what to innovate, how do we know what product line to be in. All those questions were answered. Immersion was mentioned as an important aspect. Digital immersion also being the key now that you have technology as a strong resource and support system. All these things, if you just apply some of the insights that were shared with you with such fantastic examples, I think you will fare really well, not just in Tinkerpreneur this year, but overall in life. This is a very helpful session, I would say, for everyone. And we are very, very thankful to Sharat Sharma sir for taking out time for this session. Our community of 10,000 Atal Tinkering Labs, along with teachers and students, have hugely benefited from this session. And we look forward to many more sessions from you, sir, because I personally can go on listening to your talks, and so much to learn in everything that you share and speak about. So on behalf of everyone at Atal Innovation Mission and Dr. Chintan Vaishnav, as well as the entire team, thank you so much for giving us your time and for this session, sir.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you, sir.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.